faceless comedy. It's a choice of a new generation. So hold on to your hats and let's go.
I'm standing on the set of Boys and Girls. Behind me, men and women are screaming. All authority is broken down. It's absolute madness here. And no one can find the person responsible for agreeing to this programme. We really are witnesses the last few weeks, I think, of Channel 4.
Well, welcome to Gash on local election night. I bet you've just remembered. The cynics predicted widespread voter apathy, but we can get a more accurate view if we look at the latest exit poll, which says... I'm joined tonight by John Holmes and Nick Wiltie, and John Oliver is over at the results desk, receiving information as it comes in.
Well, yeah, we're already hearing, Armando, that more people voted on Sky News' interactive vote on whether local elections were important than voted in local council elections. So a huge gain there for abstract opinion over tangible democracy. Also, there's been a confusion with electronic voting between the local elections and I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which means that Phil Tufnell is now running Sheffield with the Liberal Democrats, and the Conservative candidate is currently in the jungle telling Sian Lloyd to watch her filthy mouth.
Thanks, John. More information from John as it comes in. OK, there's also national voting in Scotland and Wales today, but not in Northern Ireland, where elections to the Assembly have been postponed until the autumn, or until Ian Paisley dies. Whichever's best. We'll also, of course, be covering the big news story of the day, the revelation that 2 suicide bombers who blew up a Tel Aviv bar were British citizens, the final proof the world was looking for that there are clear links between Britain and Al-Qaeda. This and the fact that we've got weapons of mass destruction and our leader is mad can only mean one thing. It's time to launch an attack on ourselves. So Britain, look out, because we're coming after you, us.
Would you think there would be a coalition of the willing against Britain?
Against Britain?
France,
obviously.
Russia. Yeah. Robin Cook, I'm thinking, probably would be.
Claire Shaw is not sure.
No, I mean, America would probably join that coalition as well, because they've got some bombs left over. And they're used to shooting British soldiers.
That's
so,
right.
You know, they'd just probably carry on doing that.
I mean, that whole thing, like Iraq, in Iraq, you know, the Americans killed more British than the Iraqis, didn't they?
Yeah. You
know, friendly fire. It's like George Bush put the oops into troops, didn't he?
But the Americans, you know, decided to attack Britain because of that. They'd just get it wrong. They just attacked Bahrain or a Brita water filter or something.
Well, another story that's... I was so taken by Dominic yesterday just leading on a fish story that I was taken by a worm story today, which is that in the wreckage of the space shuttle, they've found some worms that went up in the shuttle and they're still alive.
They're not just worms that they landed on.
No. These are special labelled worms that are still living. I mean, my theory is that it was sabotage and the worms did try and wrestle the controls of the ship. OK, well, to encourage more voting today in the council elections, there have been all sorts of new voting methods introduced. So in some regions, you can vote by text message or email. In Bedford, you can shout. And in North Yorkshire, they've simplified the voting procedure by allowing you to nail your candidate to a cross. So, John, have you got any more information on voting procedures around the country?
Absolutely. The Isle of Man is considering giving the vote to women. If that works, they might, I stress might, extend it to include Chinese people, gays and children. Not necessarily in that order. In Blackpool, you can vote by roller coaster. In Luton, by scratch card. A man called Dennis was said to be both surprised and confused that he voted Tory. And in Matlock, if you vote in 5 consecutive elections, you can get a free vote in the next Zimbabwean one. So, something for something.
I know that in one constituency, you can actually hire Teclyn Whittock to stand behind you as you decide who to vote for.
I think if you actually voted people in that you want, plus at Wolverhampton, and be run by Pound Shop, wouldn't they?
We thought we'd be welcomed with open arms, but we've met only anger and resentment. And as yet, no one knows the full cost of this atrocity. But there's evidence to show it's massive.
And a first result has come in from Watford, where you can vote by text. Gareth Gates was the favourite to win there, but in fact it's gone to the BNP, who won because they only have 3 letters in their name. Now, today being the 1st of May, it is in fact the 6th anniversary of Tony Blair becoming Prime Minister, and as any history of the occupants of number 10 will categorically show, the moment a Prime Minister is in power for 6 years, he or she goes officially mad. I'm joined by Matthew Parris, who's a political columnist in The Times and The Spectator, and someone who's been documenting for some time Tony Blair's recent signs of madness. Welcome to Gash, Matthew. And what have you noticed in his behaviour over the last 6 to 12 months that prompts you to think he's mad?
Conviction.
Conviction?
Conviction, yeah. And it's, after conviction comes sincerity. After sincerity, you start bombing people. Conviction is very dangerous in politicians. It's the opposite of the rest of us. The rest of us start life as young men and women quite sincere and enthusiastic, and we get cynical as we get older. Politicians start fairly cynical, and then when they reach about the 6th year of their premiership, of their prime ministers, they're haunted by conviction. Then they go completely off the rails. Happened to Margaret Thatcher, didn't it? 1985, 1986.
Yeah, you were her private secretary for a while.
Well, no, I was a clerk in her office.
Oh, yeah.
And she was quite sane then. But do you remember, about 1985, she started saying we instead of I. And about 1986, she wore a dress to the Lord Mayor's banquet that was so long that it needed train bearers to carry it in. And the same thing is happening to Tony Blair.
What, if you he's going to wear a dress?
He very well may. But, I mean, within a few weeks of the end of the Iraq War, he's giving interviews to She magazine. He's going crackers.
Oh, no.
Crackers.
Well, see that photo he did, like David Beckham type, all sort of monochrome. Look at me. It was spooky, wasn't it?
Dangerous. Really scary.
I think he's starting to think he's David Beckham. He thinks he's that powerful.
Does he actually think he's going to Real Madrid?
Surreal Madrid. Yeah.
But if he does go mad, I mean, I'd like to see him go mad like the guy in Cape Fear.
Yeah.
I want Blair. If it's tomorrow that he goes mad, 'cause it's been 6 years, is he just going to sort of strip to the waist and get a tattoo of a crucified Claire Short on his back? Just be Bush and hate.
I don't care. I don't care what he does, as long as he ends the siege by turning the gun on himself.
The other thing that is a clear sign of madness in politicians is when they start saying "trust me," "trust me" all the time. Insurance salesmen, estate agents. Vicars, preachers, and mad leaders.
And convicted madmen.
Yes.
Yes, it's the way he says we will find weapons of mass destruction in the same, way that he said that the Millennium Dawn was going to be very good.
Yeah. Yes, or Jack Straw, do you remember when someone said, what if they don't find any weapons of mass destruction?
Yes.
He'll say, well, then we know they're hiding them.
The other person who's been bleating a lot this week is Peter Mandelson. Who I know you've had some influence.
My special friend.
Yes. Yeah, are you going to in him tonight? Yes. And he's been saying that when Blair sacked him, it was the worst day of his life, and Blair was about to ruin his career, his life, his hair, his dinner. And people see Mandelson as a very sort of cool customer, but actually underneath it there's a very prissy, dare I say, Queenie character there, as displayed in his victory speech at the Hartlepool result of the 2001 election.
And they underestimated me because I am a fighter and not a quitter.
I will survive.
Apparently, he's saying that I outed him on Newsnight.
Yes.
As an act of attention-seeking. And I thought to myself, well, it takes one to know one. So.
OK, well, we'll come back to Matthew in a moment. But over to John with some more news.
In Dumbarton, it was a postal vote, and that constituency's been won by Perfect Pizza. Voters will now be waiting to see if they can deliver. Within half an hour. Or you vote back. In Yeovil, voting was modelled on the Chad system in Florida, and the winner in Yeovil was George Bush. A few eyebrows were raised there, especially as George Bush's cousin is Deputy Mayor of Yeovil. Yeovil are currently advancing on Syria. And finally, in Yatton, the voters have spurned the major parties and voted for a giant wicker man. 70% turnout, 98% in favour. They wanted that wicker man. Armando, they got him.
Thank you, John. We should get him in. Really. Yeah. OK, just in case you're wondering why we haven't interviewed a Conservative MP this week, we've interviewed Labour and Lib Dem MPs, but the Tories pulled out. We even asked William Hague on. This is absolutely true. He sent us back a letter saying, sorry, he was busy writing his book on William Pitt. Yeah, he's in a studio next door just now, recording and presenting Have I Got News For You. So watch out on Friday, because either Have I Got News For You is going to be very dull, because it's going to be fronted by a man writing a book. Or he's a two-timing slaphead. Ian Duncan Smith has said his position remains secure as Tory leader, even if the Conservatives don't do well tonight. And this is borne out by the results of our opinion poll. We asked Tory members around the country whether they retain confidence in Ian Duncan Smith, and if not, who they would prefer as leader. And they replied, whatever. Now, our irreverent political comedian Mickey Dick has been out and around with his unique political satires. Tonight, he takes on-the-edge comedy to fresh extremes, because in the same way that the Americans have called French fries freedom fries because they don't like the French, Mickey's decided to be an American film producer, ringing up a famous comedian's agent with a film offer, and there's a twist in his voice.
Hi. I'm an American producer from Universal Studios, and I'm interested in your Dawn French for one of our movies.
Right.
There's just one thing I need to get across to you before we carry on with this phone call. That is, she's going to have to change her name from Dawn French to Dawn Freedom.
Is she?
Yeah.
I don't think this sounds like a goer to me.
Come on, she'd love the movie. It's a great movie. She'll love it.
Would you like to tell me the plot? Give me a synopsis.
Yeah, sure. It's about a car.
A car?
Car.
What would Dawn's role be?
Sorry?
What would Dawn's role be?
She would be playing the love interest of the car.
Sorry, where are you calling from?
Can we get back to the Dawn Freedom thing?
No, I don't think so.
It's funny. What?
I'm sorry, I'm finding this all rather tiresome now. I'm going to terminate the call.
No, you... Moody.
Well, we were talking about Ian Duncan Smith resigning, but it's interesting to look at the order of succession if Tony Blair had stepped down during the war crisis. The Prime Ministership would have been passed on in the following order. 1, John Prescott. 2, Ewan Blair, if he was sober. 3, Charles Kennedy, if he was sober. 4, Donald Rumsfeld. There's a story behind that. And finally, 5, Ricky Gervais in The Office. Some more results in, John?
Sure, for a moment it looked like the Conservatives had won a seat, but in fact they've just won a SEAT. It's the Reader's Digest prize draw. They're over the moon. Good luck to them.
Well, thanks, John. We'll be back after the break with more results and more chat with Matthew Parris, plus Piers Brosnan, balloons and alcohol abuse.
Everyone here has become desensitised and brutalised. Earlier, the programme makers were forced to deploy new rounds and special guests. But so far, nothing's worked. Everything around me is total rubbish.
Oh, like smoking and dancing, that kind of thing.
Right. And that'll be funny.
It'll be really funny because it will look like the real people.
Even when it's close up, it'll still look like them.
Yes. And then what we'll do afterwards will be put on a voiceover so that it sounds like it's the real people really talking. It's very clever.
And you won't spot that their lips aren't in sync.
Well, possibly, but to be honest, people will be laughing so much by that point they won't really notice that kind of detail.
Well, welcome back to our last flash of Gash before we dash. Should have rewritten that line. And terribly disappointing, the May Day protests out in London today. I saw one protester with a banner saying, whatever. But John Oliver has more information on how the protests went.
That's right. Ipswich have just declared independence. They've detached themselves forcibly and are currently rowing towards Norway. The BNP have demanded a recount in Bradford, saying there must be more racists than that. There just must be. They promised me that, God, I'm lonely.
And another?
Truro voted for a desk. They've just missed the card when voting. Loads of them did, and they're being governed by a desk. Democracy doesn't work.
I think elsewhere May Day is supposed to be a time when people are so boiling over with anger and resentment that they can hardly suppress it. But for us, May Day is a bit like Mother's Day. We feel we have a kind of civic duty to feel protesting about something or other, but we can't quite think what. All right. You probably find there's a local authority grant for making a protest placard for May Day.
If it's like Mother's Day, is that why all the protesters carry flowers?
It just wasn't coordinated enough today, though. What the rioters need, what the protesters need, is some sort of global coordination, perhaps.
So, a big organisation, sort of
multinational corporation to control what they're what they're doing. Muck rioters or something like that.
Riot bucks. The day after the anti-war march, I looked on the Stop the War Coalition's website, and it said our next protest will be to take place on the first Saturday after the war starts. And I sort of thought, for an organisation whose only job is to stop a war, they've sort of fallen at the first hurdle there.
I saw them today, and there must have been about 200 on the May Day riots thing.
Yeah.
There were these people called the Campaign for Clearing Up Capitalism, and they were carrying vacuum cleaners. That is so English, isn't it? And they hadn't thought it through. We're against capitalism and technology. Where are you going to plug the buggers in then?
But the ones on the anti-war march, it was interesting because they were all sort of political virgins in a way, and they were going around saying, what do we want? A rhyme for hoon. When do we want it? Soon.
Am I right in thinking Jeff Hoon is a Scottish insult?
Jeff Hoon?
Yeah, I'm sure Jeff Hoon you. That sounds right.
I think what we should do is we should go and sort of campaign and protest on behalf of multinational companies by just throwing lattes through the windows of squats.
Protesters have caused a grand day worth of damage. OK, well, this programme has tried to steer clear of the whole celebrity culture issue. We sort of reckon we're above all that. And then realise that if we do talk about celebrities, actually, we probably will get more viewers. So let's, first of all, before going into discussion, take our cue from Heat magazine. And earlier we went out and about with paparazzi on the streets of London to see which celebrities we could spot just wandering around in unguarded moments. Who's this? It's Vladimir Putin. Coming to London to give Blair some of his mind. Or it's Haig, the duplicitous slaphead. What's that? Stone the crows, it's Piers Brosnan. It's Wayne Rooney. Out to have a word with his manager.
He's got a football in his eye.
And finally, Struth. It can't be. It's Jermaine Greer. Strange celebrity at the moment is Paul McCartney, because he's one of the biggest celebrities in the world, and yet he's still fussing over how we remember him, and he's trying to get the credits on all the songs that he contributed most to over John Lennon. Instead of being called by Lennon and McCartney, they now have to say by McCartney and Lennon, which it does make you think.
He wants that to become law, I think. He's got to come first in every partnership ever there was. McCartney and Hutch.
McCartney, Mungo and Mitch.
Yes. McCartney, Gifted and Black.
McCartney, Writing and Arithmetic. But you think, but what's your problem? You are Paul McCartney. You used to be in the Beatles. What's that? You've won. It's just you and Ringo Starr through to the final. It isn't a problem.
We text which we want to win.
What is it with him?
I think his lawyers are also trying to get L and M reversed in the alphabet, so his letter comes first.
But in fact, he's now got so much money because he was declared the richest musician in Britain at the weekend, and he now has so much money he's spending it on buying off the Oxford English Dictionary the rights to the word yesterday. so that we now have to pronounce it Yesterday by McCartney and Lennon.
Crazy. Hammerstein and Rogers, Bailey and Barnum, Sullivan and Gilbert. You can't reverse
We're
things.
going way back in time.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I was just a toddler when Gilbert and Sullivan were around.
People are saying this is Channel 5's Chris Moyles show all over again.
OK, we've looked at Blair's personality. Let's finish by looking at George Bush, who, as most people seem to have forgotten, is a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. Now, surely that has an important bearing on his behaviour today. Well, here to tell us if it does, and it does, because we wouldn't have booked him otherwise, is Jan Falkowski, a psychiatrist with a special interest in addiction. Yes, no...
Yes.
Well, that's absolutely true. It's not a comedy guess. but Bush was a known drug and alcohol addict.
That's right. I think there's been a lot of publicity about his having been an alcoholic in the past. But I think the thing is that when one talks about somebody who's had alcohol dependency, it means even though they're not drinking, there's still the risk they could relapse at some stage and, again, begin to drink heavily.
OK, so how do they avoid that risk?
They need to really look at all the things that put them at risk of relapsing. So they need to change their lifestyle, they need to look at anything that stresses them.
President.
Becoming president, taking on responsibility.
Avoid
travelling.
Stress, did you say?
Avoiding stress, yes.
Right. So 9/11 wasn't good?
On a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably about 12, yeah.
Right. And they need to impose some sort of structure to their lives. And obviously, distraction?
If they can put a new structure in and develop new interests that take them away from situations where they'd normally be tempted to drink, that'll make it much more likely they'll remain abstinent over the course of time,
OK, and does this behaviour which led to the initial alcohol addiction, does it sort of manifest it in other ways? That manifest itself in other ways?
It can do. One of the problems is some people are almost addictive in terms of their personality, and they may go on to be addicted to other things. So a lot of people who've had problems with alcohol may become dependent on things like sleeping tablets or tranquilizers. So
or invading countries.
Or travelling a lot, yeah.
Because it was rather frightening that after the war in Iraq, that just very, very suddenly after that, Syria was mentioned a lot.
Well, one of the problems with addictions is often people get withdrawal symptoms.
Right.
So they need to sort of re-expose themselves to their preferred...
And, of course, you'd need to go to countries that are dry, so there's no alcohol.
Well, that would help them stay dry. That'd be a very good move.
Right, well, this is quite frightening. We actually did an experiment, a proper scientific experiment. It'll be in Nature next month. Because what we did was we injected a mouse with alcohol and placed him on a map of the world. And as you can see, his first tendency was to go straight to Iraq. But here's what happens next. Proof! OK, back now to John at our results desk.
The Tories have refuted claims that they're exaggerating victories and have simultaneously announced gains in Narnia, Londinium Central, Mordor and Legoland.
OK, and back now finally to our prankster Mickey Dick, who's got something to say about the aftermath of the war.
British forces in Iraq have been having trouble finding weapons of mass destruction. So I thought I'd help them out by coming down to this army base here and handing in my weapon of mass destruction, this home blender.
Can I help you, sir?
Yeah, I'm just handing this...
Stop! Come back! Hey! Stop or I'll fire! Stop or I will fire!
Thanks very much for taking part in tonight's show. Thanks go to John Holmes, Nick Wiltie and John Oliver. To Graham. So I guess Matthew Carris and Jan Wiltowski. And just leave you with one final result. Bolton's election was conducted via email. The results have just come in and it's been won by click here for penis enlargement. Good night.
Coming up next on Channel 4, Britain's worst urinators.
Well, don't mind them. In actual fact, coming up next is, was Hitler a Nazi? Well, this is actually the real announcer. Why do so many people pay to watch a small, fat, hairy guy having sex? Channel 4 reveals the incredible career of porn star Ron Jeremy. It's next. Honest.